Hello folks, welcome to the Books and Fantastical Wigs channel. If you're new here, my name is Shri, and today I'm talking about a few reasons why I will probably never read 100 books a year. I'm hoping to make this a short one, but let's just get right down to it. First reason, I think a lot of you can relate. I simply don't have enough time. Yes, some people would say, oh no, you just don't want to do it because otherwise you'd be able to prioritize it in your life. But no, okay, maybe partially true. Maybe reading is a priority, but reading 100 books a year is certainly not for me. Most of us are juggling full-time jobs. We probably have families, and we probably have other hobbies too. I also like making candles and selling them. I would love to get back into dancing, and there's just so much more that we have going on in our lives. Kids are a huge factor in how much time you have left in the day. Like, at that point, it's less of a choice and more of like, okay, you gotta optimize, you know? Either way, I just don't see myself being at the stage in life where I'm ever gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna set a goal to read 100 books a year. Also because I don't really see it as the major achievement that a lot of people seem to imply it is online. Reason number two, reading will just become a much less enjoyable hobby at that point once I start setting those goals. And it's not just about getting through these books, you know. At that point, I would literally start choosing shorter books just so I could hit the number goal, and that is not why I read. It kind of sucks the joy out of reading, in my opinion. I know for a fact that no matter how much I read, there's going to be someone out there that can read more than me. I'm not trying to compete with them. And that's also not why I started this booktube slash occasionally maybe candle making channel. And frankly, for someone who likes reading Sarah J. Maas, Brandon Sanderson, I want to read Lord of the Rings, and having 100 books goal just is not in alignment with the different kinds of books, the different lengths of books that I want to read in my future. Of course, I have shorter books I want to read, but also it's going to take a while to really grapple with and get through some of the other books I want to read, or it'll just take some time even if the prose itself is very, very simple. Sorry, but like a number goal simply doesn't make sense to me. Reason number three, I am a slow reader, like really slow, and I'm okay with that. I'm very okay with that, just because I like letting these words and these stories as I read them just kind of marinate in my head and really like experience this world, let it build in my mind. And all of that does kind of make me a slow reader, but that's also kind of what makes it enjoyable. I mean, if you just skim through everything, just knowing the story, I am probably not going to visualize it as deeply as I possibly could. I guess this also ties into retention. 100 is just a random number, but I'm just using it as an example in this video. Still, if I set this numbers goal and I'm running after that, which ties into reason number four, one of the intentions that I have with my reading journey at this point is to put more thought into it, think more about what I read, and retain a little bit more of what I read. I'm not expecting to remember every book years down the line after I read it, but I do want to get into the habit of being able to draw these connections, being able to actually think a little bit deeply about what I read. For example, in my reading journal for The Hero of Ages, I ended up using, I believe it was one particular phrase, and expounding my thoughts on that. You know what? Might as well show you that example. Okay, so I'm back. I did have a few lines here that I wrote down my thoughts about, and if you have not read The Hero of Ages and you are planning on doing so, this might be a bit of a spoilers. The lines go like this: "Death to the nobleman, rule by the ska. Sometimes you have to destroy in order to build something better." At that time, the survivor had been a voice of hope, of spirit. His same words repeated now, however, become tools of hatred and destruction. So the reason this stood out to me, just to provide a little bit of context, is the ska were slaves to the noblemen, and once the revolution allowed the ska to overthrow the noblemen, there was one town where a ska took over and decided to punish and put to death all the noblemen within 2 generations that he could find. Now, he was being controlled by an evil force, that is a totally separate matter, but point is, he was killing little children whose grandpa might have been a nobleman. And it became this thing where these lines that were used back when the ska were trying to fight after 1,000 years of slavery, now it was being used against the noblemen to inflict cruelty on a group that no longer had power in society. Now, there are actually quite a few references and analogies that I can make about this regarding the real world. There are some issues that I don't even want to touch on, but in my journal, I was speaking about how one phrase when used in two different contexts, can mean two very different things. And the two main scenarios that I saw here as of right now is the way people responded to BLM and also the No Kings protest. And if you know that the No Kings protest happened on October 18th, just recently. And there were people coming out saying, hey, if this guy was really a king, you wouldn't be able to protest. Totally missing the point in the context, totally ignoring his overreach of powers in the government, and totally ignoring the fact that he is a wannabe monarch trying to monarch. I think it's a way of diminishing what is actually going on in the government right now. I mean, we don't live in a vacuum. We have a guy up there right now that literally has no respect for either the Constitution or the checks and balances that this government was intended to have. I live in the States, by the way, if that wasn't clear by now. And before I go any further, I just want to say I'm okay with speaking a little bit about this on my channel because I want this place to be, or at least this space to be, a safe space for people of all backgrounds. If you're not tolerant of other people just based on their background, what they were born into, I'm sorry, but this channel probably isn't for you. So I'm just gonna read out a little bit of what I wrote just so you have an idea of what I thought and how this related to the lines that I read earlier as well. I found it profoundly relatable to the events or examples in reality. It really exemplifies and shows how the context within which something is said can really change the way it's understood. In this case, this person that decided to persecute the nobleman was never there to hear how it was said by the actual survivor in the book. One real-life example is BLM following George Floyd. The context of the injustice gave rise to the quote, but was misconstrued by bigots who chose to ignore the context of how these protests even came about and exclaim, "All lives matter," implying that Black Lives Matter is standing for Black Lives Supremacy or something rather than equality. I think it's a purposeful or ignorance-led misconstruation of the original message to divert the power from the true message or what it was actually intended to be, to question its moral tenacity. Point is, drawing these sorts of connections is also what makes reading enjoyable to me, and it's honestly what makes fiction cool. That was reason for why I would probably not read 100 books a year, because I actually want to reflect. I want to think on what I read. And at the end of the day, it makes me truly enjoy reading a lot more than if I were to just consume, and just feel like my brain is just numb after consuming all the things that I probably don't remember now. Anyways, thank you so much for staying until the end. I super duper appreciate it. And if you would like to see more videos like this, definitely comment below. I would love to get to know what you guys think about the whole setting goals in terms of the number of books read per year. I mean, I can imagine it probably helps some people. Maybe they're driven that way. Maybe that's what keeps them accountable. It's just not for me. Anyways, thanks so much and have a wonderful weekend.